Here's another game of tiles that features a nice tricky tactic, and there's a certain similarity with a game that I looked at the other day between Philip and Tal, the kind of position that's reached. So let's take a look. So Tal with the black pieces, playing Rukavina, who's from Yugoslavia, and here's a similarity with that Philip game. Basically, Tal reaches a Benoni position, but with colours reversed. He's very happy to take the space advantage. You know, the only difference is that this pawn is on b3 and not a particularly useful move. So Tal, as though playing with the white pieces in effect, and let's see how the game develops. Well, Rukavina decides to turn the game into a kind of Benko gambit. Of course, if knight takes pawn, then knight takes e5, so that gets taken. And now a3. But there's no need at the moment to take on a3. That would be too obliging. And Tal simply reinforces that pawn. And this is it's actually a very favourable Benko gambit for Tal. The opening certainly has not been a success for white. So the knight spins round, trying to put some pressure on b4. Bishop g4, excellent move, and queen d7. Again, we saw this in Tal's game against Philip, that controlling this diagonal is actually very important. Sometimes you can trade bishops, but the bishop here puts nice pressure on e2. And white played rook e1 to bolster the e2 pawn. And again, I'm going to hand it over to you. How would you play here with black? So if you want to have time to just pause the video and think black to play, what would you do here? Put yourself in Tal's shoes. What did the maestro play here? Lots of good moves, of course, but he found a really good one. Okay, I've given you enough time. He found e4, and this shows what a sharp tactical eye Tal had. The point is, of course, white would very much like to play knight takes pawn. The problem is that after, well, it doesn't matter which way round you do it. Let's just play b3 straight away. The knight has no squares. It's remarkable. It's in its own camp, but nowhere to go to. This is the problem. So after this move, white has an enormous problem, and there's even a threat, because of the beautiful position of the bishop on g4, there's even a threat to take on d3 and exploiting that pin. So this is already dreadful. It's very, very hard to actually defend in a decent way here. So Rukavina had to take with the pawn, but that's disastrous. Once this d-pawn advances, attacking the knight and the pawn here, and this is already absolutely dreadful for white, because with the pawn and bishop locked in, it just controls, just dominates white's position and splits white's position in two, actually, and it's very useful for black that he can use this d4 square. Let me just show you the rest of the game very, very quickly. Tal's pieces just coming into white's position. I'm not going to offer sort of other defences for white, because after this pawn break e4, it really was hopeless. But the finish is rather cute, actually. You can see the queen working its way into white's position, and the finish is rather sweet. Okay, instead of recapturing here, the knight comes hitting the queen. Queen moves across, knight f3 check. Of course, that can't be taken because of queen f1. King goes in the corner, and now the queen creeps in. Threat, bishop takes knight. The knight comes back, but now you can take on f2. And there's no defence, no decent defence to queen g1 mate. So somehow, even when Tal crushes his opponents, there's a kind of a wit. There's somehow something quite humorous about the way he manages to defeat people. So there we go, a very simple